Hello, guys, welcome to this podcast, Everyday Talkies, which ironically does not come out daily. I am Anshul and I talk about random things to random people, majorly about life, perspectives, and thinking process. It's like an interview, or let's say more of a conversation with one or two guests about random topics that interest us. To be really honest, it's just a way to reduce my inhibitions in talking to people. So come join me and enjoy. Hello, guys, welcome to the new episode of Everyday Trekkies. Today, we are here back again with the fifth episode of Lower Decks.
Which is called Cupid's Errant Arrow.
Weird name. Well, we'll get into it, but we'll have to first go through the IMDb description. I don't even know, why do I read this? But okay, let's just read it. Mariner is suspicious of Boimler's new girlfriend. Tandy and Rutherford grow jealous of a bigger starship's gear. Day by day, I'm just getting more and more sad by reading these descriptions.
No, but for this one, I really liked your voice. Serious, captain voice that you were doing.
Oh, well, this description does not make any sense, but okay. Moving forward into the main context, let's follow our ritual and talk about our initial impressions. So, Pushkar, did you like this episode?
I absolutely loved this episode. Maybe because I did not like the last one that much. This one was like a huge step up for me. I really enjoyed it. There were, I think, like 3 different plot lines going on there, and all 3 of them were amazing for me. What about you?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I think episode by episode, the standard is increasing for me. I'm really loving it. Again, it is heavily content driven, I would say. There were multiple, stories happening. So I really liked that and the way they switched through. And each of them had their quirks, which we'll surely talk about. But then, yeah, it was an amazing episode.
Yeah, it's surprising to think how much they jammed into this episode in like 21 minutes.
There were so many references. Oh, damn. I was trying to keep count. So let's go character by character and soon the plots will unveil.
Okay, for this one, I think we have to take it in pairs. We'll start with the A plot, which revolves around Boimler and Mariner. So the basic premise is that the Cerritos has come to help the ship called the Vancouver with a mission that is about blowing up a moon so that it does not crash into a planet. While this is happening, Boimler is at the Vancouver, where he's like really excited to meet his girlfriend. He has a girlfriend now apparently, who he just met last month. And you get Mariner, who's like, first of all, she does not believe him. She's like, is she a holodeck person? Which is like, that is a very insane thing to do according to Voyager. Basically, yeah, so the A plot line revolves around Boimler trying to, not be jealous of his girlfriend and her ex-boyfriend, and Mariner trying to prove basically that there's something is wrong with this girlfriend and something, she's not a real person and she's maybe just using him, or she's a shapeshifter, or she's a parasite or something, because she thinks that Boimler could not possibly score a girl who is as talented as Lieutenant Barbara Brinson, right? The first thing I want to mention is, in every episode, the first note has always been the theme song still kicks ass. Like, I cannot get over how good this theme song is. Then secondly, I want to talk about the animation, because the opening shot where you see all these planets,
awesome,
they look absolutely beautiful. Like the whole scenario of the moon slowly imploding, it looks absolutely amazing. Then we get on to Boimler trying to, I don't know, he already has a girlfriend, but he's still trying to impress her with, he's like, what are the coolest clothes in history? Just like make a mishmash of it and I'll go wear this and try to impress. And so my note just says like, Boimler is such a dork.
Well, he is.
Okay, the best thing about to come out of this A plot line, I think, was we find out that Brad Boimler's full name is Bradward Boimler.
Well, that was a weird name for sure.
Yeah, and I loved that for the rest of the episode, Mariner just calls him Bradward, like nothing else.
Well, that's Mariner for you.
Yeah, and I liked how the plot proceeded, where it kind of went on this whole typical sitcom thing where Boimler tries to go, impress his girlfriend who's like already impressed with him. But then he goes and constantly keeps screwing up. But then I really like the way that they subverted some of these scenarios where even though Boimler embarrasses himself and Barbara, she's still okay with it. She's still putting up with it. And then even Mariner is trying to embarrass them. Like Mariner is completely, she's become fully paranoid. She's like convinced that there is something wrong with this thing. And I found it somewhat sad that like in the end we basically find out that both of them are suspicious that the other person is basically either a shapeshifter or parasite, because both of them think that the other one is too cool to hang out with Boimler. And so I kind of found that really sad. Like everybody thinks that Boimler is such a loser that nobody would hang out with him unless unless something must be wrong with him.
Well, you finally get to know that Boimler was the one hanging out with a parasite in his head, and that is why Barbara got probably attracted or got into him.
The happy ending was for Barbara and the parasite, and poor Boimler was left all alone back again.
The good part you could say in this way is Barbara was into Boimler for the parasite, but Mariner was there from the beginning in spite of the parasite just because of his dorkiness. So well, that relationship is what to be explored.
I mean, even though Mariner comes at it from a perspective like how can such a beautiful person be interested in Boimler, but at the end of the day it's still her main motive is still trying to protect Boimler, and she cares about him so much in that kind of way. And when she says like he is a dog but he's my dog, that was really sweet.
Well, that was one part of the plot line. Do you want to jump into Rutherford and Tendi?
Yes, I do, because Rutherford and Tendi, the plot, while the story itself of the thing, it was basically just them having a friendly competition. First of all, I have a question. What is Tendi doing repairing stuff on the Cerritos anyway? Isn't she a medical officer?
I know, but initially they established this weird equation between them that they help out each other. They do things for the sake of others. I don't know. With lower decks, you'd never know. Initially, that was the one thing which irked to me, but then I was I just brushed it off. I was just loving their equation and the friendly banter they were having and the conversations they were having that I overlooked that fact completely.
Yeah, it is. I guess it's more like Tendi is such is so in love with the whole idea of being a Starfleet officer that she's just in her free time she's just helping out Rutherford fix the ship, and just geeking out with him over random things like diagnostics and those T-88.
They were geeking out over just a tricorder, a T-88, nothing else. Their entire plot revolved around one basic thing, that they were fixing something. Then they got an opportunity to go at Vancouver. They were admiring it. They were in love with this new tricorder called T-88, and there was a friendly competition between them that whoever wins will get that tricorder. And one thing I should really commend Tendi, that in spite of Rutherford being a cyborg or whatever you could say, they both finished equal number of diagnostics at equal amount of time.
I know, right? Yeah, Tendi is super fast. When he's not using his implant, he's at 16 and Tendi is already at 22. If Rutherford did not have that implant, I think Tendi would be easily Tendi would have beaten him. But also there's this amazing joke at the start where when Tendi and Rutherford enter the Vancouver for the first time, they're all completely gobsmacked by the beauty of it, and then Mariner is it looks exactly like the Cerritos.
Well, that is the fact, right? From the outside, it does look exactly like the Cerritos, but when they were geeking about the panels that they were talking about, half of this technobabble, I don't even understand what they're talking about. It's just feel-good things.
It's basically white noise, or it's basically ASMR for nerds like us. We just hear technobabble and it just soothes us. That joke was really good because if you look at it, a lot of the Star Trek episodes, there's this so many Federation ships, and when you cut to the interior of that ship, all of them basically have the same interior, which is a nice joke on that.
Well, it makes sense.
So what I loved most about this B plotline was both Tendi and Rutherford, when they're working together, when they're nerding out, there's such a wholesome bunch of people. They're nerds, and they're such wholesome nerds. When they're sitting in the bunk and they're contemplating whether to transfer to the Vancouver, and they're it has this, it has that, and the last thing they say is it also goes whoosh so well. The doors always go whoosh.
Well, this very much reminded me of the comparison that we used to make with O'Brien on Enterprise and with O'Brien on DS9. You say whatever you want, but DS9 being so crappily maintained, he expertised in that, and I think that is the same with Rutherford and Tendi. They're swooning over Vancouver, but Cerritos is their home. They have their friends there, and even though it's imperfect, that's the fun, right? You get things to do there.
Yeah, that's what the Cerritos constantly keeps breaking down, and that's why it's so much fun, because they constantly get to work out problems and do all this interesting stuff. And so yeah, in that way, I absolutely love Tendi and Rutherford are slowly becoming my favorite characters on the show. They're so optimistic and they're so wholesome. I really love them.
No doubt about that, I'm sure.
But easily by far the funniest thing for me was the C plot, which is barely a plot, which was about Captain Freeman and all these like purple people and this one red colored guy who are basically arguing that you should not destroy their moon. First of all, they have like 6 moons, and they're like, you cannot destroy this moon because this will change the tide and our farming will go and this and that and all that. So Captain Freeman is basically trying to solve it, and at the end she just gets so frustrated and she just starts throwing out solutions. She gives the most like logical basic solutions, and everybody's like, oh, okay, fine, like we don't mind. It's nice when Freeman gets under pressure. She can really like become like a Kirk type captain, so she throws out solutions. Everybody's fine with it except that one red guy who's like, if you blow the 5th moon out of our space, then our 6th moon will get polluted, and all this like the civilization there will be destroyed, and you cannot do that, and this and that. And he's like, our people's murder will be on your hands, and you're Starfleet, you're not supposed to be murderers, and all this stuff. And they keep doing it, and at the very last moment, that guy's like, if you blow that moon out, the both of us will have to move. And she's like, what do you mean the both of us? How big is your civilization? And he just goes, just me and my wife, we live on that moon, we're kind of rich. And Freeman just like, not even wasting a second, she just go, blow that goddamn moon out of the water.
That is what I love about Lower Decks, like taking the most obvious scenes that were there in initial Star Trek, but just blowing past them in a completely different perspective. Oh, it's just awesome.
I mean, it's such a simple idea that Starfleet is such a wholesome, welfareist organization that they're not gonna bow down to a couple of rich guys just because they think that they should be considered more important. The moment Freeman finds out that this is not about saving a civilization and just these, two entitled, privileged, rich people, she's just like, screw this, just blow that moon.
And you know what? Given there were so many things in this episode, we are gonna introduce a new thing in this episode. Okay, so now we'll talk about our favorite scenes, one each, and then we'll talk about our favorite references to old Trek. What do you say?
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very good idea.
Because this episode had quite a lot of them, so I am just overflowing with that.
I'm curious to see if we both got the same references, like same favorite references, because there are a couple of obscure ones in here which I think you and I will both really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, first let's talk about our favorite scenes, and then we'll move on to the next part. So which one was your favorite scene in this episode?
I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious by now that obviously my favorite scene was when Freeman goes full, badass captain, and she does not give two shits, and she fully solves that whole crisis in like 2 minutes. That was obviously my favorite part of the whole thing. And the second favorite, I guess, would be Tendi and Rutherford just hanging out in the lower decks bunk beds, being all wholesome and nerdy.
Yeah. Those were quite some nice scenes, no doubt about that. For me, I would say one thing which does not really matter with the story or the plot, but the initial scene, the opening scene, I was in love with that. I paused it. I just wanted to make it to my wallpaper. I was just cropping it. I was wasting time to just get that image out of the
scene. Same. It looks so beautiful, dude.
Yeah. Even in later parts, like when the moon was imploding and they had this barrier around, it looked so beautiful. I really liked those scenes from a viewpoint, like just as a graphic point of view.
And yeah, another thing I noticed in this episode is, even though it's like animated, so they can pretty much do anything, I like that all the ship technology is very, still 80s, 90s futuristic technology. The one they had in like TNG and Voyager, where the whole animation about the moon that's going to crash into the planet, it's basically just the moon and then arrows going dot 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 and on the planet. It's nothing like futuristic that we have in, say, like Discovery or something like that.
Yeah.
So I also appreciate that simple fact very much.
Yeah, like they are sticking to the canon roots. But okay, coming back to scenes, yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes, no doubt about that. And was this from a scene perspective, let me think of a different one. Which one should I pick?
How about the Manor flashback with the old uniforms?
Yeah, that was actually a beautiful scene as well. Like coming to it, yeah, now that I remember, because
Mariner's friend got eaten, but okay, sure, it's beautiful.
Oh, come on, it was beautiful because, we were discussing in one of the episodes that, we want to see what happened with Mariner because she talks about so many things, that she has lived with so many things. This was the first time we actually got to see a flashback where she went to Cujo and where she was having a word, and then one of the guys turned out to be some kind of alien shapeshifter. So that scene was good, like something which we predicted, which we wanted, so that happened. So yeah, that brought a closure to that. I'll be always obviously looking forward to more such things where she draws her knowledge from. She does seem more experienced than the others. Okay, so now that we have covered scenes and the characters and all of that, and one thing that needs to be added here, that this episode had, I would say, equal screen time for all characters, like all the main characters, I would say.
That's true. Yeah, it did. I mean, it didn't have like say someone like Shax or the chief medical officer, but they're not really big parts of the show anyway.
Correct.
You had good representation for Freeman, Ransom, and our main four main characters. So that was really good.
Yeah, because in previous few episodes, we could see that if the main plot is about, let's say, Boimler, we don't get to see the others. But if the main plot is about, say, Mariner, we don't get to see Boimler at all, which happened in the last episode and previous one where Tendi was ignored completely. So this episode was like a balance of all, and I think this is a correct formula that they have, I think, probably got. I'm sure they have already made the all episodes, so any of my suggestions won't really help, and I'm not sure whether they're listening this or not, but this formula actually, for me, strikes the correct balance.
Alex Kussman is just like around the corner listening.
Oh, it would be great if he's listening to this podcast, but this formula I think seems great, where there are multiple plots going on with different characters, and we get to see what they're doing, and we love when Rutherford and Tendi are nodding out and with a banter between Mariner and Boimler and all of that. So that whole thing seems very good.
I 100% agree. This was a perfect, perfectly balanced episode where you had a good amount of time for the A plot, a good amount of time for the B plot, which was a little bit frivolous, and then you had like a tiny C plot, which was a proper, like, it was just like 2-3 jokes, but they were really strong jokes.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we have already praised this episode so much, why don't we come to the references part of it?
Yes.
So I'm sure you might have spotted numerous ones, but if you had to point one vivid reference out which really stuck out for you, which one would that be?
Okay, mine is obviously when Boimler is trying to describe Barbara's ex. It was the same one, right? Yes. He says like that guy is like a Kirk Sunday with Trip Tucker sprinkles, which was like, I thought like as soon as Trip Tucker came up, I was like, Anshul is gonna get this exact reference. Like, I absolutely know it.
Well, they merged, original series reference and Enterprise. Hats off to them for sure for just spanning that long distance.
Exactly, and it's a nice acknowledgement of the whole Enterprise canon, which isn't referenced that much these days. And also, like, there was another Enterprise reference. Did you like? I don't know. Did you get it?
Yeah. Wait. Okay. So one I got was Suliban's reference.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yes. When they were describing when they were trying to find out whether Barbara was shapeshifter or not.
Yeah, she could be a Suliban. I mean, now I'm thinking like, if anybody who does not know Star Trek is just gonna like. They're gonna think we're going crazy here. Like,
yeah, I am so sure.
Yeah, why are these two weirdos like geeking out over something called a Suliban? Like, whose name is Suliban?
Like, I'm sure, but that is the fun, when you have watched so much of Star Trek, you find these small references out of nowhere and you're just geeking your shit out of it. And one more thing which I liked was in Mariner's flashback scene where she just takes a jabs over Enterprise, where they talk about how Data's twin brother is now helping Borg, and that reference, and something is happening every week in that ship. So that was a nice jab at it.
Yeah, that was great. That was directly referencing one of the episodes, right? When Lore kind of takes control of the Borg. That was really fun.
So small quirks which I remember, where Barbara was just quoting and one of her adventures when she was walking with Boimler and Mariner was right behind, and she was just talking, we just cracked that case on 1920s Chicago and all of that. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what? How is time travel so frequent in Star Trek?
Yeah, even the guy who's like who's trying to get Tendi and Rutherford to transfer, he's like, so many epic things keep happening on the ship every week. It's so stressful. Like, last week we had to go back in time to kill a guy who was worse than Hitler.
Yeah, like, that's just so weird. Like, how is this happening? Like, how is every ship capable of time traveling now all of a sudden?
Yeah, whoever is in charge of the temporal prime directive is just like his alarm is going off constantly.
No doubt about that. And the fact that in Vancouver, whosoever was his bad's password was Riker.
Yeah. And another really great thing when the rich red guy who's like, don't blow up a thing, and like, isn't this against the prime directive? And Freeman's like, the prime directive, that doesn't even apply here.
Well. Oh, this episode had its moments, no doubt about that. One of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, so many good moments. One more, I think we should make a regular thing we talk about on every episode is something like, maybe something, a moral lesson or something we learned from this episode in the very Star Trek way that...
Well, you're making it too kindergarten kindergarten-y, but okay, go on.
I mean, yeah, it is, but then again, start like maybe people need this kind of kindergarten-y stuff where you kind of learn lessons. Yeah, but this one had a pretty, I mean, straightforward lesson that people should, you should accept people who, as they are, and it's fine if they don't accept you as they're not, and the people who really matter will take care of you and will accept you however dorky you are.
Yeah, makes sense. And you know what? In addition to it, I would also say that you should follow your passion. You should stick to what you do, like what you love, which happened with Rutherford and Tendy, where they saw something beautiful, they saw something which they aspired to, they swooned over, but they stuck to their ship, right? Because that is what they enjoyed, that is what the friends were, like that is what fulfilled them. That is also a good message to take away in this competing world where one just wants to go for the next best thing. So I would say that people need to take a pause and realize what's important for them and stick with it.
Maybe Boimler needs to be more careful the next time, or like maybe just shampoo your hair so that no parasite is stuck in it.
Yeah, well, these days, guys, please shampoo your entire body, sanitize yourself. That is more important.
Another great lesson imparted by Star Trek.
No doubt. Okay, I guess this will continue if you don't stop. But then, thank you, Pushkar, for again joining me. We'll meet you again next week for the next episode.
Of course.
And to the audience as well. Till then, thank you so much. Bye bye, and see you in the next episode.
Yes, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Bye.
Thank you to all the listeners. I'll catch up with you again soon with someone new and lots of interesting discussions. So, bye.